Hey, what's up, guys? It's Billy from Steel City Collectibles here with our friend Josh Getzoff from the Pittsburgh Penguins Broadcasting Team. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. There's a lot of buzz this upcoming hockey season around a really talented group of young players, namely Connor Bedard, who most collectors have already heard about and are already familiar with. Are there any players, in your opinion, that fans should also be keeping an eye on? Any young guns or young rookies coming up in the league?
I think there's a lot of incredible young talent in the NHL right now, Billy. I think when you look around at this league, it's amazing. Actually, it's not so much three or four guys that are 20 playing in the league and showing out. It's like 30 or 40 guys that are making a name for themselves, and they don't have a whole lot of leverage as far as their NHL career is concerned. So I look around this league and I think of a few names when you ask me that question that popped to mind. Some guys in the East, some guys in the West, which kind of speaks to just the depth and balance of the youth throughout the league and the impacts they've been making. First guy that comes to mind is the guy who just won the Calder, Matt Boldy. I think that this kid he's already got the size, he's got the stature. He's obviously playing in a pretty prominent role for the Seattle Kraken, a team that made the Stanley Cup playoffs last year and advanced to the second round. I look for him to continue to build. I think when you look around in the West, there's other guys too. I mean, um, that guy, though, for me, stands out the most. I think in the East, there's a lot of good young talent, right? And we know it because we see it all the time with the Penguins. Luke Hughes is someone I'm going to be watching really closely this year with New Jersey Devils. I think just like his brother, he can come in and make an impact. Although I think, unlike his brother, his impact may be a little bit more immediate. We know Jack's become a superstar, but it took him a few years to start really piling up the points and the goals. I think Luke's going to be an immediate impact player when he gets on that New Jersey blue line, which isn't the best news for the Penguins, but is good news for New Jersey and their young core. Staying in the division, I really like Seth Jarvis. I mean, this is a kid. You think about the Carolina Hurricanes and how they've found these. You don't want to call them diamonds in the rough because they're still first round picks, but these guys like Sebastian Aho that are a little bit deeper, not quite where you'd expect them to be. Marty Natchez, and I think that Seth Jarvis, after the season he had last year, still being on his entry level deal, brings so much value and is another name to keep an eye on this year because the Hurricanes are a stacked team. And he's one of those guys who, even though he's younger, he plays in their top six. He has a lot of impact. He's had 20 plus goals last year. I mean, this is a guy that I have grown to enjoy watching in the little bit we've seen him, and I think we'll continue to really like him. Going back out west, and I'll finish with a couple goalies. I always like the goaltending position, right? Because we see guys, I mean, we've seen it in Pittsburgh. Matt Murray comes in, wins two Stanley Cups. You're like, oh my God, this guy's already headed to the Hall of Fame and he hasn't even reached 25 yet. But goalie's a weird position because it's a long play. And guys sometimes don't find their game until they're in their 30s. Think of like Tim Thomas. But other guys are finding their games when they're like 20, like Carey Price or Matt Murray. Two guys that really I'm interested to see how they continue to progress. Out west, it's unfortunate he had an injury and he had to watch his team win the Stanley Cup. But Logan Thompson was the guy who carried the Golden Knights in the beginning of the year. And I would expect him, Aiden Hill's obviously the guy who got them the Stanley Cup. And I think maybe because of that, he'll have the first away to be the starter there. But Logan Thompson's another young guy that I'll be keeping an eye on in Vegas. And then back east, I was really curious as to what would happen with this guy, but Jeremy Swayman in Boston. They get the deal done. I know he wants to stay in Boston. There's also a roadblock there in the form of Linus Ullmark's contract. Those two were a great tandem last year, but I think Swayman's also a guy who's probably ready to be a one, not a 1A or 1B. And if it's in Boston, that's great for the Bruins. But if not, they have an incredible young trade chip, moving forward. So I keep an eye on those two guys as well.
Now, as you've developed your professional career, what was the transition from sports fan to sports professional like? Is it hard to keep a professional relationship with a lot of these guys? Do you really get into the game? Is it a little bit better when the Penguins do something than, say, when the Flyers or the Capitals do something?
I think you have to. I think that's the best part of my job as a team broadcaster that I do want the team to win. And I do want those guys to have a lot of success. But you also have to, walk the fine line of being fair and calling the game like you see it and not sugarcoating it because you know as well as I do, Pittsburgh is a really passionate sports town. And when you tell people things that aren't necessarily holding the whole truth to them, people don't respond kindly. And I respect that. That's the sign of a great sports fan, and that's the sign of a knowledgeable sports fan, which there are a ton of in Pittsburgh. So I look at that and I try to call it from that perspective. But at the same time, when you work in this industry and you're around these guys a lot, you start to cheer for them as people. I mean, the 2016, 2017 Cup team, yeah, we all were happy they won because the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, but you get to learn the stories of some of those guys. And I mean, I think back to 2017 when Ron Hainsey comes on board. He never even played in a playoff game, and he goes and wins the Stanley Cup. I mean, it's storybook stuff, and it's pretty cool. Trevor Daley gets the cup first from Sid in 2016 after his mom passed away, or excuse me, was really sick then, and then eventually passed away later on that summer. So there's great stories within the players that you learn. Some of it's not public. Some of it you just learn with the relationships that you build and the stuff that you talk about with them. But others are public. And then there are certain guys that you just see kind of rise through a certain organization that you want to do good, like a Jake Gensel or like a Tristan Jarry. These guys that have been Penguins their whole careers, and you want to see them reach the top with the team that drafted them and brought them along their NHL path. So I think it's a fine line that you have to walk between fan and broadcaster, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little extra oomph in your passion for the team that you're broadcasting for, because at the end of the day, you want them to do well. It's good for everybody involved, and it makes everybody happy. And a happy fan is a good fan. And the Penguins, aside from last year, have done a good job of pretty much doing that year in and year out over the last decade plus.
Trading card manufacturers are always pushing harder and harder to bring the game closer to fans and make the game more accessible. They always say they want you to get as close to the ice pretty much without putting on your skates. So, how have you seen the teams and the leagues and the players accomplish that? How have you seen them get the game into more people's households, generate more fans? How do you think the trading card industry brings fans closer to the game?
I know one thing that's been really cool is I've only recently started to follow it, and I know it's not new. The league does their Upper Decks series with the rookies. They just had it actually. I think it was last week in Washington. I've always gotten a kick out of that because you think about it from these kids' perspectives. Not only are they stepping into the pro game, and some of them, not all of them are playing in the National Hockey League come October. Connor Bedard obviously is, but not all of these guys that are at the prospect camp are necessarily going to make their NHL roster and be on the team at the beginning of the year. But I've always thought that was cool because they get to do the shots for the cards. They're doing the posing. They have their stick. They have all that kind of setup that they have going on there. And watching that more the last couple of years with some of these high octane and high profile names coming into the league, I think I've grown an appreciation for what they're doing on that front more. I've always been a fan of, and you kind of jogged my memory when you mentioned it. The article of whether it's a stick, a jersey, like a piece of wood for a baseball bat, something like that in the card. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge card collector when I was younger, but those kind of cards always drew me in. And my colleague Brian Metzer tweeted out something this summer of a Mike Lang one with a piece of his, I think it was his notepad that somehow made its way onto a card. And I was remember looking at that and be like, that's unbelievable. That's such a cool way for a fan to get a connection in some aspect that, even though it's this little, like, what, half-inch sliver of yellow notepad, you feel like you're in the booth with them because you have that piece that was a part of his broadcast. And I know that that's how I felt when I was younger, when I would get those cards. I particularly remember the baseball ones with the sliver of the wood from the bat. And you could touch the wood and be like, wow, this was like the bat that, I don't know, that so-and-so used when they were batting. I don't remember the exact cards, but I loved those particular ones. I know they have the jersey ones too that are really cool. And I know those have continued. So I'd say that's something that I really think is cool is how they bring the fan a little bit more closer to the player or the broadcaster in the sense of Mets and Mike Lang there. To have a bit more of a connection as opposed to just being like, oh, I got, Sidney Crosby's card. Like, wow, I got Sidney Crosby's jersey card. Like, this is part of his jersey. This is unbelievable. Like, aside from knowing that you have a decent amount of money sitting in your hand right there, you also have a pretty cool collectible of that. So I think that stuff's really cool. And I hope that continues. I mean, it's definitely fun to watch it kind of have a resurgence here in the last few years, and I hope it continues.
We often say that trading cards and collectibles elicit an emotional response with the fans. Players, when they go out of their way to do something, teams, when they win, there's always something there, that really great story behind the trading card or the collectible that makes it so legendary. Do any stories come to mind as far as what you've seen, how players have interacted with fans or how the players have made that connection with their fans?
There's a few things that come to mind. I wouldn't say there's a particular story, but there are just moments in time that I kind of have frozen in my head. traveling with the team, you see a lot more than you wouldn't see if you weren't traveling with the team. And um, the easy answer is that Sidney Crosby is just a saint. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. I'm sure you guys have dealt with him as well, but he doesn't really ever turn anyone down. And that is quite a compliment when you see some of the throngs of people that are waiting for him when we show up in a hotel on a road trip. We're getting in from a game at 2 in the morning local time, and maybe we're in Canada, which is always a big event when he's out there. And you pull up to the hotel, and the line is 15 people back, holding out jerseys, holding out posters, anything they have to be signed. And I won't say he stops for every single one, but he makes a very strong effort to sign for as many as possible, and pictures he doesn't usually say no to. That's one guy that I would just say, that aspect of it is pretty special. I think he really understands the role that he's in as the captain of the Penguins, but also, Connor McDavid is the best player in the world today. I don't think anyone's taking anyone away from that, and probably is the face of hockey right now. But Sidney Crosby has embraced his role when he's been the face of hockey in more ways than one, as far as the off the ice stuff. One thing that definitely comes to mind for me as far as the athletes themselves is I've been lucky enough to go with them to Children's Hospital in Lawrenceville in Pittsburgh. And that stuff is, it's a team organized trip. So it's not exactly something that they're all doing on their own, but I can tell you, and I won't name names, that a lot of those guys do go on their own and have formed relationships with people and patients at Children's Hospital. And then those patients in turn, when they knock on wood, recover and get back to health, are able to come to PPG Paints Arena, sometimes on that player's dime, and enjoy a game for the Penguins. But that trip to Children's Hospital is always great because it's right around Christmas, which, if you've ever had a family member who has not been of great health or has had some challenges during that time, it always seems to resonate a little bit more just because it is the holiday season and things tend to be amplified because of that. So being there and seeing the players interact with the patients and seeing them interact with the parents and the smiles of the patients and the excitement to just be able to be, face to face and elbow to elbow with some of these guys that they look at as giants. I mean, listen, you and I grew up following sports. When you're really young, these guys are not just athletes, they're like superheroes to you. So they come into these rooms and they just have these incredible conversations, and they really seem genuinely happy to be there and be a part of that particular patient's day. And that has always stood out to me as something that really magnifies their impact on society and their impact on some of the people that don't necessarily have an opportunity to see or do what they do on a daily basis. So those are two things that definitely jump out.
All right, Josh, with the season just a few weeks away, is there anything hockey fans should be looking out for?
We're looking forward to the season ahead. I think this is going to be a really exciting Penguin season for a lot of reasons. I mean, just not because of just Kyle Dubas coming in, but I think what he's done as a result, and that's off the ice too. I can tell you, like, being around staff members, being around front office members, checking in with some of the players here and there throughout the summer. There's a genuine sense of optimism, and there's a genuine sense of like, wow, like we might have something here. And I think getting Eric Carlson didn't hurt those feelings. I think they only enhanced them. And I know he's in town. One thing that's been impressive for me is seeing, I think I saw today on Twitter, I think it was Taylor Haas of DK Pittsburgh Sports who tweeted it. 64 players are already in town. I mean, that's an astronomical number considering we're still about 10 days away from the start of training camp as you and I speak here today. And I will say that that blows me away of the group that was so annoyed at themselves that they missed out on the postseason last year, to come back and have that kind of a return just to set the tone for this year with so many new faces also thrown in there. I think it really adds another layer of excitement. And I mean, this team, let's be real here, they're going to be fun to watch. We don't know which direction it's going. There may be a lot of 5-3s and 6-4s that could go either way, but they're going to be in a high octane, exciting team every single night, and must see, must listen to, and we're going to be looking forward to following them along on this journey.
Thank you so much for your time today, Josh. We really appreciate it. We know it's crazy busy with everything going on right now with the hockey season just a few weeks away. So we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing your voice with the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. Fans, don't forget that you can chase all of the 2023-24 rookies in Upper Deck Hockey products available at Steel City Collectibles. We have a ton of great products already on sale and already on pre-sale that you can purchase and lock in right now. Visit our website today, steelcitycollectibles.com. We'll see you next time.